And thank you so much for coming, and thank you for all the things you have done in between, including sending out, invitations and things like that. And it really touches all of us to see how many people cared and respected my brother Don. It's just been really very touching, and I think we know that Don was a gift of music and got gifts of music all his life. And that is one of the biggest gifts we all have. I want to welcome his sister-in-law up here to the podium for a song that is meaningful to her and her relationship.
We need more sound, Marsha, please.
Okay, just keep it like. You're a singer, you can handle it.
Thank you, Karen. Karen Silman, folks. This is called Being Don's Sister. 82 years ago, I was born in Washington, D.C. 18 months later, I had a brother, Donald Wayne Howe. He was born in Denver. It was wartime. Dad was in the Philippines, and we with our mother at our beloved grandparents' house. When our father returned from the war, we lived in 2 towns in the Finger Lakes of New York State. Our scientist father began working on a PhD at Cornell. His thesis, Insects Preying on Cucurbits. He kept us fed on those cucurbits, squash every day. Donnie and I like to pick up insects and show to our father. Donnie also liked to pick up wads of gum. I had to watch him on the sidewalk to see that he didn't do what I had done just a few months before. Virginia, our dad's first job out of Cornell. We lived in a tiny town with only one sidewalk. 4-year-old Donnie could walk to the store with his nickel. On Saturdays, we walked 3 blocks to the cinema to watch cartoons. Some of you may go back that far. We ran to join the neighborhood kids lining up along a long wall outside the cinema. The line was leading to one of 2 doors. We could see black kids running down a slope. They lived in an area unseen by us. They lined up on the other side of the wall. We never could see their faces up close. The wall extended inside, but we watched the same cartoons. Don has told a story from that time. A black child became his friend, He must have tagged along with his mother, who would have come to town to clean houses or do the ironing. But one day, the mother of the child said that her child could not play with him anymore. Donnie was confused. What had he done? Oh, it's because you boys are too old now. Our mother sang a lot at home. She sometimes sang the silly songs that our Denver grandfather sang in his deep baritone. Like most kids then, we had few toys, puzzles, a board game. Our family had a radio, and a neighbor had a TV. I was in 2nd to 4th grade. During that time, Donnie and I played school often, like 4 days a week, probably. So I started young, getting some teaching experience. And I'm a teacher, retired. Anyway, Donnie was eager to learn. Henceforth, he consistently had better grades than I. I think he watched his teachers all his life, and he was one of those aware students who watched how they taught. California, Anaheim, what a change. Big, exciting changes. We had a cat, a dog, a pool, 21 orange trees, and Dad built us a clubhouse. Of course, we had a girls' club and a boys' club. Mom decided to teach us piano. We started in the same book. When she let Donnie get to the next book before me, I quit. That was the end of my music career. It took me a few years to realize what Mom was observing. I had been diligently avoiding mistakes. Donnie was making music with mistakes, mind you, but with the rhythm and the beat and the total obvious pleasure. The junior high band class started him playing brass instruments. He was small for his age at that time, but the brass instrument available on loan was a tuba. Somewhere there's a photo of him sitting in it. Eventually, a trombone became his instrument, and both of us sang in the large children's choir at church. Lincoln, Nebraska. The move from Anaheim was unexpected. That summer, I was with my grandparents. My grandparents took each of us after junior high on a trip. My grandfather was a fishing tackle salesman and going up and down the Rockies. So that was my trip that time. But I was with my grandparents and got news that via letter that I would not be coming back to California, and that they would meet me in Nebraska. Dad had a new job at the university there. Again, we joined a church choir. At school, Don was again loaned a trombone. He never owned, during his youth, an instrument, and he never had any private lessons. 4 years later, I graduated from high school and started college in town. When our parents, Fred and Don, moved to South Dakota, Dad was to head a research facility there. I stayed living on campus. I had to battle to do that. Immediately after his high school graduation, the following year, Don joined the Air Force. People often asked us, 8 schools by 8th grade? Why did you move so much? Part of the answer is my father found better paying jobs. The other part, I guess, is that he would get in a slump and he thought life would be better somewhere else. For us kids, there were advantages and disadvantages. But in terms of advantages, What other pair of siblings could say they crossed the country singing in the back seat while separated from each other by their baby brother in his bureau drawer bed? And here's the baby brother. And he's going to speak next.
So, as my sister Marcia said, hello everyone, by the way. My name is Fred. I'm Don and Marcia's brother. And yes, I do happen to be the youngest. So, as Marcia stated, immediately after high school graduation, Don joined the Air Force. And that was in 1962 from Brookings, South Dakota High School. And to reiterate somewhat, due to one of our many moves as a family, his senior year was the only year he attended that school. So it's my belief that he wanted to leave home as quickly as possible because, like a lot of young men, he did not get along with his dad for some time. And I hold him blameless on that because my dad, especially then, in those days, was not an easy man to get along with or actually a good father emotionally and all that sort of thing. So he took the best path out of town there. So anyway, after basic training at Lackland Air Force Base near San Antonio, Texas, he stayed at Lackland as a member of the Air Force band there. He had hoped, I know this, he had hoped to travel as a member of that band, but he only went to Mexico once. And I believe he went to some other places in stateside, but he had hoped to do a little further than that. And as an aside, he continued a family tradition of poker. He enjoyed it for a time because our dad used to host poker games. I remember those. And there would be 3 or 4 tables going and friends and everything. But anyway, he enjoyed it for a time. This is in the Air Force, I understand. But then found, this is what he told me, I remember this. He found that he was taking money from young married GIs who needed that money. And young GIs, they don't make a lot now, but they made a lot less then. And so they actually couldn't afford to lose it. He was very competitive in all games, and that translated into his poker skills as well. So he just stopped playing, when he realized that. So that kind of reflects on his insight and his empathy and that sort of thing. So after his 4-year hitch was up, he enrolled at Indiana University and pursued a music degree and achieved with a minor in Slavic languages. Well, yeah, and while there, he joined the Musicians Union local and was able to tour with some of the era's biggest names. And that list includes Henry Mancini, Johnny Mathis, Sammy Davis Jr., The Temptations, The Carpenters, and others. And so, it kind of goes without saying here, but I wrote it down. His reputation was quickly growing as an excellent musician. And just as a little aside, I remember him saying that of all those groups I mentioned, the Temptations gig was the toughest because they had an electrified rock and soul band, but the brass section did not get those microphones. So they had to play loud enough to compete with the electrified sound that the rest of the group was putting out there. So he said that was tough. So after college, or at college I should say, he was able, going back to poker, okay. At college he was able to indulge his love of poker, sometimes hosting the games with a roommate, and they would take 25 cents from each pot, but they would provide the snacks for everyone, so there you go. That's about all I have. I was assigned for the Air Force in the college years. For a long time, my brother and I weren't as close as you might expect. I mean, we led very different lives. And although we lived maybe 8 blocks apart in the flatlands of Berkeley, he was married, I wasn't. And so we sort of had different lifestyles going. And but I would say that in the last 5 years, I grew to know him better and love him more than I ever had throughout my life. So I am glad to have had those years. Thank you.
Probably got to know Don almost as soon as he got to the Bay Area. I don't know. Okay.
Do I need the microphone?
No.
No.
Okay. Try to speak up. So things you learn at a memorial service. I always knew Don's middle initial was W, but I had no idea what it stood for. Now I know.
That's his father's name.
Wayne. Okay. Yeah. And all about those gigs that he did with all those famous groups. I didn't know that either. He was so, I'm not sure what you'd say. He never bragged about what he had done. He just came in and played and had fun. Anyway, I am, as Marcia said, one of Don's musician friends. I'm a trumpet player and a singer. I'm not going to speak about the entire 50 years that I knew Don, for which I'm sure you're grateful. But here's some highlights. I first met Don in the mid-1970s, a long time ago. We were both young freelance musicians, getting our start in the Bay Area. We thought it'd be fun to get some friends together and play in a brass quintet, so we did. And it was a lively group. We got along well and quickly began playing concerts and shows for kids in schools. When Don and Wendy became engaged, they asked that the quintet play for their wedding, which was to be held outdoors in a park in Berkeley. We arrived at the appointed time and began playing the prelude, which was supposed to last about 15 minutes. The bride and groom had not yet appeared. When they still hadn't shown up after 30 minutes, we began to wonder what was wrong, and we were getting tired. Playing brass instruments nonstop for 30 minutes is kind of hard on the chops, except for some people here. When they still hadn't, finally, after 45 minutes, they appeared in the park, and the wedding went forth happily, with our lips so tired we could barely play the processional. Fortunately, it wasn't very long. We found out later the reason they were so late was because they were having an argument. Fast forward through the 80s and 90s, Don's and my careers parted ways, meaning we were just getting different gigs. So we rarely saw each other. He was arranging music, though, and the Golden Gate Brass Quintet, in which I performed, did a number of his pieces over the years. We liked his arrangements. There were some really great Beatles tunes. Y2K happened, and contrary to popular expectations, the world didn't end. In the autumn of that year, I was asked by a dear friend, Bill Holmes, to play in the UC Faculty Club Brass Quintet. This was a delightful group that had been already playing for the annual Christmas feasts for over 20 years. They needed a new trumpet player, so I was asked to join. Wonder of wonders, there was Don. After all those years, it was so great to see him again. He had already been playing with the group for most of those previous 20 years. It turned into one of my favorite gigs of the year. 4 evenings of friends, fabulous food, fun, music, and all the wine we could drink. Only gig on which I've ever drunk. Or being drunk. I believe all the others felt the same way, because at one point we all agreed that when we got old, this would be the last gig we would leave. I had always known Don had an excellent voice, and during the faculty club dinners, we had a good time trying to outdo each other in the carol sing-alongs. It made me think, I wonder. I suggested Don audition for the Merry Old Christmas Carolers. The MOCC is a large group of professional singers in the Bay Area who dress up in Victorian costumes and go out in quartets all over the Bay Area to entertain at parties, in shopping malls, and corporate events, to name just a few. And there's another Merry Old Christmas, well, 2 more Merry Old Christmas Carolers here today. Becca Burrington, who was brought into the group by Don, so she's my grand recommendation. And Michael Crozier, who got me into the group. I suggested this to several of my instrumentalist friends who could sing, but Don was the only one who actually followed through. He joined and became a valued part of the organization. We especially enjoyed singing together on these engagements, the 2 brass players on either end of the group. There was a huge outcry of sadness when I informed them of his passing this fall. Don was also a good composer. My last memory of him
Not a professional musician.
My last memory was of him asking my husband, Michael, again, right there, to record a Christmas rap that Don had written and wanted to promote. They met at a mutual friend's house, and he's here too, Norman in the back, percussionist, and worked all day on it, just 3 days before Don collapsed. He was productive to the end. Thank you.
Great pleasure to introduce to you Gregory Gomez Quartet.
Yeah, we're missing one player, but do you want to try it? Three of us?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Are you trying?
2 of us played with Don in the Oakland Municipal Band, and I don't think anybody mentioned that Don was a very fine baritone horn player, euphonium baritone, and so you know, it was a real pleasure year after year to play in this band music, these great musicians. So we're going to play Urlit, Gustav Mahler from the Second Symphony, and this song talks about how the world is in pain. We're in pain. This is part of life, but in the end, there's always redemption. And I think that's all I'll say. It's sort of-
This is called winging it.
John's brother-in-law, married to Marcia.
Can't hear you, Bob.
I'll have to speak a little louder then. How's that?
That's about that.
Okay. Anyway, I was saying I'm Don's brother-in-law, and this is kind of hard for me because Don was taken so quickly, such a surprise, and such a disaster in my life. And, you know, I think I'm going back and forth, and I want to hold on to his memories, and, you know, good and bad. They were not all good. But Don was an amazing person, and so I'm just going to cling to those memories and go back and stay with them as long as I can, more often perhaps now than I did before. I can't make any more. At any rate, I would like to now announce a break. And the break is going to be probably half an hour, which would give all those of you who are parked in 2-hour spaces a chance to go in cars, maybe go in tandem, trade somehow. I'm sorry about the parking being so difficult here, but take advantage of this time to do that. We'll see you in a while. There will be refreshments, and we'll see the exhibit.
So we have to audition as a guitarist.
Thank you. expecting that tune. You were expecting a Beatles tune, but I'm sorry, Marcia, we flipped the program on you. We thought that might be a nice come to Jesus tune to grab your attention as you finish your drinks and your food. I'm Stephen Ruppenthal. I'm the music director for Brass Act, and we have 4/5 of Brass Act here today. Dawn played with us for over 20 years. I probably should play and not talk. But anyway, I'd like to introduce the group. From Brass Works, that Dawn also played with since the 90s. As a matter of 98. In fact, we met Dawn in 98 when he walked into a recording studio while Franklin's group was recording his Congress of Vienna album. So that's how long Dawn's been with us. This is Diane Ryan on French horn. Franklin Davis, who's the music director and principal trumpet for Brass Works. Michael Kunst, our longtime tuba player. And our special guest, Chris Vincenti, on trombone. I have to say, I'm really, really pleased that he was able to come back with us. He was a member of Brass Act for many years and moved away to Davis. Dawn took over for him, but it looks like Chris is back with us. Chris Vincenti.
I'll only say that I met Dawn because of Franklin as well. It wasn't in 98, but it was pretty soon after I moved to California, which would have been like 96, 97. And I found out from Dawn that there was a dance band in town. Such things exist, vintage dance. And so I ended up getting involved with the band, Franklin's band, because of Dawn. And then met Stephen as well, played with the quintet over the years as well. So Dawn has been a big influence on my life for decades as well. And I'm sure almost all of us in this room would have similar stories about life, about music, about travel. Don and I talked about travel at the last job I did with him. He was super happy to be going on a cruise. And I had happened to go to one of the locations, talked about it, so it was very nice. And thank you all for being here. I'm happy to be here.
That first piece obviously was gospel medley. I just wanted to say that John wrote that for Brass Act for a performance we had down on the peninsula at a church. And that's kind of become a signature song for us. Anytime we need to pull something out of our back pocket, we pull out gospel medley. We love playing it, and so that's kind of where that was at. The next piece is Recurring Dream. Recurring Dream is a Don Howe original. It's one of my favorite tunes of his original pieces. And we've been playing this now for at least 10, 12 years, either in Brassworks with Franklin and his group, and of course we share musicians between the groups, or with Brass Act. So this next one, Recurring Dream, I would love to give you a date on it, but what Don did with his pieces is he would write a piece, bring it to rehearsal, we'd play it, and then the next week there would be another whole version of it. And it kind of revolves, and this would revolve and revolve and revolve. I think this is probably about the 10th version of Recurring Dream. And sometimes it's hard to keep the version straight in our folder. So.
It's actually about a dream that Don had. It was a recurring dream, and this melody, at least one of the melodies, popped up in the dream.
challenging. He goes into so many places there for us. I don't know, I think I asked Don to come up with some kind of a blues piece for one of our concerts. And he walked in with a thing called Flea Farm Blues. Flea Farm Blues. And we just had a really good time playing Flea Farm. It's a simple blues lick. And we just take solos on it and have a great time. I want to say that Don was a personal friend, not only a musician colleague of mine, but a personal friend of Belinda, my wife Belinda and myself. And we were very good friends with Don and Faniella, and shared some nice dinners, some nice evenings with them. And I just wanted to say that we miss Don, and we miss the two of them together. Danielle? Fee Farm Blues. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 3. He had some delightful Beatle tunes, and we've been the recipient of so many of Don's Beatle tunes. I just checked, I think we must have about 10 or 12 of them that we've played. And, but before we play I've Just Seen a Face, I'm looking if there's anybody else in the quintet that would like to have a remembrance of Don. Mikey?
I guess one of my favorite ones, I told somebody this just about 20 minutes ago, is we were returning, Don and I were driving back from a gig up somewhere a few hours away, and just listening to Beatles tunes and singing along the whole way home. One of my favorite memories of Don is that particular trip. So yeah, I think about it a lot when this piece comes up.
I remember Don very much. My husband and I owned a condo in Incline Village, and we had a gig up there, and I invited Mike and Don Howe to come up and play. What was it called?
Joe Schmiel.
Pardon?
It was by Joe Schmiel.
Joe Spiel Band.
Joe Schmiel Band.
Yes, right, but it was Oktoberfest.
Oktoberfest, yeah.
Oktoberfest. Anyway, so we went to dinner in Reno, and we found this restaurant that we really loved. It was cheap, and it was steak and lobster. We got it all for like $15. And Don was thrilled.
Speaking of restaurants, we were able to book the Brassworks Band with Norman, who was here earlier as our drummer, to do a little tour of the South. So we landed in New Orleans, and our flight delays made it so that we almost missed our dinner that night because Stephen and Belinda had made reservations at Commander's Palace in New Orleans. What we did was we kept them on the phone. We said, here's our flight delay, here's the latest delay, here's the latest, that's okay, we'll accommodate you. We got there after closing time. Their whole staff welcomed us. We had a table of about a dozen people, big round table. And when it came time to serve our dinners, here's how they did it in the South. There was a server behind each one of us. You couldn't see our plates. On a queue that was, we couldn't even see the queue. All of the plates came down at the same second. That's how they serve people down in the South. We were so privileged to have our first dinner there, and then we toured up into Mississippi and played a concert and a dance for fans of the Brassworks who used to dance to our Victorian balls and had moved to Mississippi and paid for us to come over there. So that was one beautiful memory where we all traveled together and had a wonderful time. And I remember my first impression of Don Howe was the god of the euphonium. I got to play in Oakland Municipal Band under Fred Rose, their conductor, way back in the 80s. Don was the god of the euphonium, and it was such a privilege to be able to welcome him into my group, the Brassworks, in the late 90s, and for him to have spent the last 26 years in the group. Such a privilege.
Thank you, Frank.
So we're going to leave you with one more tune, and this is Don's arrangement of the Lennon-McCartney piece, I've Just Seen a Face. One, two, 1, 2. Pardon me.
We'll just keep rapping.
Keep happy.
We'll come in and beat.
All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Let's do B. B, letter B. 1, 2, 3, B. grab the wrong horn when you've got 4 horns in front of you. So thank you very much for listening.
Hi everyone, my name is Sogan. I am I'm Don's nephew. And
Mine too.
anyone also Fred's because they're brother. Anyway, I can't do my glasses. Can everyone hear okay? Yeah. Okay. I wrote a little something of my memories of my uncle. As I reflect on my Uncle Don's life, I'm reminded of the profound impact he had on me, and obviously countless others. His passion for music, teaching, and life itself was inspiring, and his sudden passing leaves a gaping hole in our lives. As a professional musician, Uncle Don's passion for music was contagious. He breathed life into every note he played, whether he was singing or playing a horn. His compositions and arrangement for brass ensemble and chorus showcased his creativity and talent. As a music teacher, he dedicated his life to nurturing young minds and fostering a love for music that will endure. But Uncle Don was more than just a musician. He was a complex, multifaceted person with a quick wit, a generous heart, and a contagious laugh. His comical side, often reserved for close friends and family, could light up a room. His love for history, politics, and travel broadened his perspective and enriched our conversations. I have many fond memories of Uncle Don. As a child, I was awestruck when I visited him in Berkeley and saw his motorcycle. I was fascinated by his wedding. I don't even know, 5 years old. And where I wore my first suit, a brown corduroy ensemble, perfectly in style in the 1970s. I remember the birthday surprise party for my 10th birthday at his house, his beloved dog Panda, and our family gatherings filled with music, laughter, and love. As my music teacher, Uncle Don taught me more than just how to play the baritone horn. He instilled in me the importance of time management, commitment, and perseverance. He helped me develop the skills and confidence to join a youth ensemble called the Bay Area Wind Symphony. And I will always be grateful for the opportunity I had with them to tour Scandinavia with the symphony. One of my favorite memories of Uncle Don was our trip to Reno, where he took me for my 21st birthday. We stayed at the Fitzgerald Hotel and Casino, where he taught me how to play various table games, including Pai Gow poker. I remember indulging in king crab at the buffet and feeling like a high roller that night. Uncle Don's enthusiasm and guidance made the experience even more enjoyable. Years later, when my first child was born, Don generously offered a significant monetary gift, despite his own financial uncertainties. Just 3 days before he passed, I saw Uncle Don perform at Great America Amusement Park's Oktoberfest celebration, where he generously had offered us free tickets, and we watched him perform with joy. My kids danced to the chicken dance, and we shared a brief final conversation before he left for his break, and I'm grateful for that moment. Uncle Don, I'll miss your loud, boisterous laugh, your generosity, and your empathy for everyone. Your legacy will live on through the countless lives you touched, the music you created, and the memories we shared. Thanks.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Nadia, and I'm here representing Young People Symphony Orchestra, better known as YPSO, where Don was a teacher for, I think, 30 plus years. I don't know how to summarize all that because he, just did so much during that time. He was, he's a musician, a teacher, a composer, an arranger, and just a wonderful person to all of our students over the years. And I've only known that for like a small portion of that entire time. I'm going to introduce some folks from YPSO who have worked with him for longer and can share the stories with you, but I just wanted to say that I know his legacy is strong because recently our YPSO's trombone section actually approached me and said, hey, we want to play for this event. And I was just so touched by that, and you'll hear them in a moment. But first, I'd like to introduce David Howe, who is our former YPSO board president, to say a few words.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm going to try to do this without the microphone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to say some things that are probably taboo for this sort of event, but maybe not so much. How do I want to start? I think this is very unexpected. And when I look at this thing, I found out the program, he's younger than I am. I always thought he was younger, I always thought he was younger than me, and I found out he's older than I am. That's what I meant to say. And then I got that messed up here and a little nervous to start out. Sudden losses. My roommate, college, Carlos Ruprecht Universität Heidelberg, founded in 1386, a long time ago, trumpet player, passed away unexpectedly. And I'm thinking, well, they have horns at the pearly gate, don't they? So maybe those two guys will meet each other once in heaven, maybe. I'm not really sure. I'm not terribly religious, but a little bit. We're not going to get too religious today. David Ramadanov knows this story probably. I'm not really a musician, but I got an A in beginning college piano. With the assistance of hypnosis by the wife of a former Johnson administration White House staff member who worked at the college where I went to, and he says, hey, you're telling me about your recital for the piano class. My wife happens to be a hypnotist. You should come meet with her so you're not nervous for the recital. It worked. I got an A in college piano. I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm done. But when my kids were little, this is where I'm leading into something here. When my kids were little, I had them over at St. John's Press around the corner when they were still wearing pull-up diapers in the music class, right? Music classes. And fast forward, my son, who's almost 30 now, did some percussion, and he took lessons from Ward Spangler, who some of you might know. It took me a long time to get him to do that. Then my daughter, who was playing violin, piano, and singing, her violin teacher said, hey, there's this thing called YPSO. Your kid should audition for it. And that was about 14, 15 years ago. That's where I'm leading into the story. I promise it's going to be less than 30 minutes long. But the point of that is when she auditioned, she got in, and the first performance that I went to was in Castro Valley, at the high school in Castro Valley. And it was a jaw dropper. And then I went to the fundraiser picnic at the Rose Garden here in Berkeley, and some of the parents invited me to get involved in the 75th anniversary gala that was over here at the Claremont, right? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. I'll co-chair that. And I did it with Dave Davis No, Jonathan Davis, I take that back, Jonathan Davis. Dave Davis became our manager later on. Did that, and then somebody said, hey, why don't you join the board? I said, well, okay, you know, my law practice is pretty busy, but I guess I could make time for that. So, boom, I'm on the board. Then 5 minutes later, I'm the board president. And then we're talking about things like how much to pay the coaches and what's going on. And I'm working with Wendy and David and Keith. And Wendy mentions this guy, Don Howe. And I said, who's that? And I didn't know that they were married for probably months, maybe even years. They were very professional. The taboo part is I kind of remember something about things unraveling and selling a house and some of that stuff that I heard about peripherally. But Don and I were basically friends through what I would call a common purpose. And that's YPSO. Not because I'm a musician, because I am not, but because we both cared about the organization. And we cared about what was happening for the kids. And my daughter played 3 seasons in YPSO, and then she, no offense, David, she can't stand the Monday night rehearsal, so she went and did something else with Eugene Storr over at the conservatory in the city. And I wanted to say something about how teachers and coaches are some of the most important people. They are the most undervalued sometimes as well. So I get into the banalities of things like, do we give the coaches a raise? Are they gig workers or are they W-2 employees? We go back and forth, the law changes, this and that. And I advocated for, you know, an affordable increase for the coaches. And not that Don ever said anything about being thankful for any of that, but he would always send me these links to the community organizations where he thought I should be getting clients from. And I always thought that was very charming. You know, I don't know if I ever got any clients from that source, but maybe, because I think the Berkeley Parents group was in there too. I don't really remember all those details, but I admire the work that he did. I think that friendship through a common purpose is one of the things I take away from it. I think that music is an extension of your soul. I said I wasn't going to get too religious or metaphysical, but I admire so much the people who can play music, write music, perform it, conduct it, because I think what they do is an extension of their soul. I wish Don were still around so that we could share more stories. Gonna miss that a great deal. Thank you so very much for inviting me to speak today. And now I get to introduce one of my favorite Davids. But I go by Dave when he's around, because he's David. But David Ramadanov, and when you see that in print first and you try to pronounce it, it takes a little while before it rolls off your tongue. But he's been our maestro, YPSO's leader, musical inspiration for, well over 3 decades. And I'm going to turn it over to David to continue the reminiscence.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
This afternoon has been more of a learning experience for me about Don and the range of stuff that he did as a musician and the range that he had as a person. I consider him a friend, but I'm realizing that there's so much about him I didn't know. particularly about the range of music and the range of roles that he played in the music. When I first took over YPSO in 1988, Dave talked about the value of coaches. There were no coaches. There was no low brass section. Greg Gomez actually became a large part of our low brass section and helped to grow. And little by little, we expanded it to the point where we could afford coaches, and let me tell you, they are among the most important people that I work with, because they teach the kids their parts, and then I get to teach them how those parts fit together. And then eventually it becomes an extension of our souls. I mean, Dave is absolutely right on when he says that. The major role I always saw Don play was as a mentor, as a coach, occasionally as a performer when he would come in and substitute for one of the members of my low brass section in the Vallejo Symphony when I was music director there. But I also just remember watching him and listening to him in auditions for incoming brass players. And no matter what the instrument was, he had a suggestion about a small adjustment that they could make, either in their equipment or in their embouchure or something that would make it easier for them to play. And right away you could hear the sound change. That was the kind of teacher he was. He also thought a lot about what it was to be a performer and how you get past the fear and the tension of performing. And he said, what you do is imagine the best performance of this piece that you're trying to play, and then play that version of the piece. And he was so good at communicating that. I think, before I go any further in that comment, I would like to read to you something which was a tribute from Oliver Tuttle, who was a member of the trombone section right during the COVID time into the time that we were finally able to come back together as an orchestra.
We can't hear you back here.
I'll try harder. Okay. Oliver sent this message to Keith when he heard about Don's passing away. And Keith forwarded it to me. And I think it probably says so much about what so many trombonists and other brass players experienced in playing in YPSO and working with him. He says, I am heartbroken to hear the news of Don's passing. Not only was he my coach through YPSO, but I studied with him previously every week for about 8 years, starting in the 4th grade.
Wow.
He was one of the most important mentors in my life. To put it simply, Don Howe taught me how to play the trombone, and I will forever hold him dear in my heart. I regret to inform you that I will be unable to attend his memorial as I am living and working as a professional trombonist in New Orleans. And I would have to miss a few important gigs to attend. I will be there in spirit. I will honor Don's memory on my coming gigs as I continue to play trombone for the rest of my life. Thank you so much for reaching out and letting me know. But as you've already heard, Don wasn't just a trombonist. He was a tuba player. He was a euphonium player. He really mastered the brass instruments. And as a person, he was a mentor to kids in other sections of the orchestra. One of my favorite memories, and it's a memory that Pam and I share, and by the way, my wife Pam would be here if she wasn't playing for ballet classes until 2 o'clock this afternoon. But Wendy, as executive director, helped organize our tour going to Alaska. And Don came along as one of these chaperones. He had 2 little percussion players who were both about 11 years old in his group of people that he was chaperoning. And we finished what we were doing up at the University of Fairbanks. And he took them for a ride on a train that was going around the campus. And the rest of us were all wondering where he was. And we were all sitting on the bus getting ready to go, and by came this train. And there was Ben Ring's face in the window, and the other and Don waving to us. But he took such good care of him. And it was just who he was. You've already heard about him as a composer. You might find it hard to believe that one of our alumni was Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead, bass guitarist. Wendy was the one who found that out because she went to a book signing that Phil was doing in San Francisco, and she read about this, that he had played violin in YPSO. She said, "Would you like to be a guest artist with us?" So he came, and he guest conducted, but beyond that, we said, why don't we play one of his tunes? Guess who did the arrangement? It was beautifully done for the orchestra. So, arranger, composer, trombonist, teacher, singer, all of that stuff you've been hearing about today. So you can see what a wide-ranging and very full life he led, and what an incredible person he was. My wife and I, even though we didn't know Don and Wendy as well as some of you have done, we nevertheless treasured the friendship that we did have with them. And one of our favorite memories was going on a hike into Denali National Park when we were there in Alaska, with Wendy following up with Don, Pam walking back with Don and talking about how frequently she got lost. And Don said, well, why don't you just tie a rope to David's waist and follow along. And in the meantime, Wendy and I became good friends as well. And
a true conductor.
Beyond that, his passing was so sudden and such a shock. And the guys who were here in the trombone section experienced that firsthand and really saw it, and can tell you also what a wonderful coach and teacher he was. And he was doing it right up until the very end. And he finished the section, and then he collapsed and got taken to the hospital, and they couldn't do any more for him. I'm sorry. I will miss him on a personal level. Our organization, our entire staff of coaches feel like he's one of the family, and we will all miss him as well. Thank you, Marcia, for inviting me. And I'm very, very happy to be here with you. The last thing we have, I think, is a very special treat, because the members of the YPSO brass section, including one alum, are going to play a piece for us, which, Daria, I don't know if you wrote it or if you arranged it.
I arranged it, yeah.
You arranged it.
Yeah.
So please welcome the trombone section from next year.
Alright, hello everyone, my name is Darius and Mariki. I currently play trombone for White Kisso, and this is Connor Rudolph, an alum, and Jackson Lim and Ryan Wong, all currently members of, these two are currently members of White Kisso, he is an alum. So I want to say something like, the impact that Don has had on all of us over the years, well not over the years, we were all there for a year maximum so far, but close enough, has been tremendous. I remember when I walked in for my audition and I was nervous and I messed up part of my audition, and then he made me restart, and then they made me restart. And then he told me 99% of good playing is mental. And that is something I am studying music, I'm going to be a professional musician, so that is something that is probably going to stick with me for the remainder of my career. And I'm still very young, I'm 19, so. And we all have that was my Don moment, I'm sure they all have theirs, but I remember we were there when he collapsed, and I tell you, he was trying to be there for us until the very last moment. I remember the last thing he ever told me as I was leaving from the floor was, have a good rehearsal. And never did I ever think that that would be the last time I would see him. And obviously it's been he has given me such good advice that I still take to heart with my playing and stuff. And it's been just I remember after he died, every old guy I would see it be oh my god, it's Don. And I think it's him. It's you have that response, and it was definitely really tough, because it happened so fast. It makes you really think we all realize afterwards that 1 second someone can be just fine, and then 2 hours later, 2 minutes later, 2 seconds later, they're gone. He was there until the very end, he was doing well until the very end, playing until the very end. So with that, I'd like to introduce our piece. So I arranged a Cole Porter piece called After You've Gone in dedication to him. And I remember someone said that he would always come back with a different revision of his arrangements. I literally did that, except it wasn't every week, it was every day. So maybe he was watching me from there. Please don't let me mess up, Don, please. All right, let's tune it. So After You've Gone.
people who've
There you go.
really helped us put this together. First of all, Karen Silman for singing. And for arranging this venue for us. And then all the musicians, all of them who put in the time to rehearse and perform here today. I think this is a real tribute to Don, and I want to thank all of you. And then to Nadia, who was there right after Don collapsed, helped get him to the hospital, not physically, but calling 911 and being there, calling us there when we arrived, and has since been very giving of her time in getting messages out to people and basically getting the YPSO very intimately involved in this event. So thank you, Nadia. And to David Ramadanov, thank you so much for your kind words, for being who you are, and being here today. It's been a real treat having you, and it's a real tribute to Don that you just gave. And then Bill Harvey, another person connected with YPSO, and who was also there the night that Don collapsed. And Bill and Nadia together helped get him to the hospital. And Bill unfortunately can't be here today. He's playing a gig. I know with the holidays coming up. We're glad to get everybody who came. And so that's really it. We're so grateful to all of you who've come, been a part of this, and I hope you've enjoyed. And we do have one final thing, well, two, and one announcement. Just an FYI, this is being recorded, so we hope it will be available soon on YouTube. If anybody has a concern about that, let us know, please. And then I want to introduce Nancy Kester to guide us in, since we started the program with a song, we're going to end it with a song. This one isn't all sing, it's a round. You will teach us, Nancy Kester.
First of all, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I had the privilege of meeting Don, of course, through my very good friends, Bob and Marcia, who are also my neighbors. And then I got to know him professionally, musically. We're both composers, and we took a seminar at the jazz school. And in doing so, we shared our compositions. And I really got to know what a consummate musician and composer Don was, and truly magnificent, as we heard today. I think it's very fitting. Marcia had suggested that we sing the song as a group, Music Alone Shall Live. And I think this says everything. This speaks volumes, because obviously Don's legacy will go on forever through his joy and through the phenomenal music he created, and also through his teaching. So, without any further ado, I will sing Music Alone Shall Live, but I'd like other people to join me, because I think, how many people know Music Alone Shall Live? Well, please then sing along. Okay, I'm not really a singer, so you can join me with this. Okay. All things shall bear. Okay, one, okay. All things shall perish, all Ready, everyone? Yeah. All things shall perish from under the sky. Music alone shall live. Music alone shall live. Music alone shall live. Never to die. Great. Okay, so how shall we divide up? Okay. It's a little bit complicated, but let's say this will be maybe all these wonderful musicians here. You'll be part one, okay? And then everyone kind of in this general area will be part two. And then the people back here will be part three. And you'll come after each phrase. So we, all things shall perish from under the sky. And then all things shall, okay? All right, here we go. And we'll, okay, are we ready for part number one, part number two? And sing with all of your heart.
Does that mean we need to stand up?
Oh, please stand.
Yep.